Hello, this is Catherine. Today I will be talking about the competency of impulse control. So, impulse control can be defined as the degree to which a person can control their desire for immediate gratification. So, this is very relevant in terms of processing one's emotions and trying to find a sense of peace immediately. And I will get into that in just a few moments. So, impulse control as a competency for emotional intelligence, this refers to how a person's actions, the decisions they make, and the words they speak in the workplace can impact their relationships. So, having a higher sense of impulse control shows or indicates one's ability to remain composed, which is very important under high stress situations or when there are high demands or high amounts of pressure. People with a high sense of impulse control have the following skills. They reflect on the situation, they plan ahead, and in the planning process, they consider the potential consequences, the drawbacks, the good consequences, and how others will be affected. They are also good mediators and they are able to assist with resolving problems. So, impulse control matters because our behaviors, our actions, our decisions, and our words have consequences that can impact our reputation. If you're a person that makes rash decisions in a moment without thinking them through, that will affect your reputation or how others see you. They may see you as someone that makes reckless decisions and may not trust your leadership. So, impulse control is actually highly related to empathy. Being able to control your impulses not only requires you to have emotional awareness of yourself, but you're also putting others first. When you're in the middle of a challenge or unforeseen pressure, as can happen in the workplace with the high demands for productivity or a question or concern about the quality of services being provided, one can feel stressed or unable to cha- face that challenge. But first, someone with high impulse control should ask questions to better understand the other person's thought process or point of view. They can demonstrate empathy for that other person's situation. And also, one with high impulse control should decrease their demands and expectations of others. So they're really able to insert themselves in another person's shoes, which is considered empathy. Having not having impulse control um, is the opposite of empathy in a way because it is focusing on yourself. It is attending to what you feel is most important at that time without taking into consideration other people's feelings, other people's reactions or thoughts, or how they will respond. Low levels of impulse control can hinder your decision making, so you're just reacting instead of thinking through that decision. It can have an adverse effect on communication. When someone acts impulsively, they may forget to communicate the plans, expectations, or goals to their team members. This can also impede the planning process where um, plans are not effective or even put in place. You're just acting and reacting. Low impulse control also indicates a lack of focus. For example, if you are constantly responding to text messages or emails or acting out of turn, this shows a lack of regard for the person in front of you. So, there are some ways in which one can improve and strengthen their impulse control. Um, as we can kind of tell, as we've noticed, the competencies of emotional intelligence are all interconnected. They overlap. For example, impulse control is related to empathy and putting others' needs or emotions ahead of your own and acting smartly. So there are some strategies one can do to improve employee morale and also strengthen the organizational culture. First, that begins with self awareness. So, one of the articles I read stated that self awareness is the first step to personal development, and I do agree with that statement. This involves being able to recognize the emotions you're feeling by listening to your bodily sensations, recognizing triggers, recognizing the changes in your mood, and also that leads to an understanding of what those emotions mean. So, what's the difference between anger and frustration, or irritability and anxiety, sadness and depression? So, you have to understand what those emotions mean in certain situational contexts. And successful management of these emotions is really important in relationships with other people. So, how you feel and how you exude or emanate those feelings, how and being able to understand how they affect other people around you, because our emotions do affect the people around us. And again, it's also being able to perceive how your emotions impact your own productivity in the workplace, but also the moods of the people around you. If you're entering a team meeting irritated, your team members will pick up on that. They will pick up on your facial expressions, and they may feel anxious around you or disturbed by your negative emotions. So it's being aware of those chain reactions. So, some four simple steps to improving impulse control include journaling. So, just journaling when you're triggered, journaling the emotions you feel on a daily or hourly basis, even depending on what's going on at work, and just looking for behavioral patterns. Um, just maybe reflecting on a conversation you had with a colleague. Did you look at the situation rationally? Another step was just setting a daily alarm for personal reflection. So maybe on your lunch break, pause and reflect on how the morning has been going so far. Look at any situations that caused you stress and reflect on how you handled those situations and notice any changes that happen over time. Another useful tool is simply asking the friends around you in your personal life or your colleagues at work for feedback. They often can notice behaviors or your reactions to things that you may not notice. And so you could ask them for how they feel around you and use that feedback accordingly. And then another step that was suggested was taking an assessment, because those can be rather insightful and provide information that you may have not already had. So, one other topic that was discussed was having a delayed response. Often, when our phones go off or when we receive an email, we have the tendency to respond right away. But it is actually more crucial to pause, maybe count backwards from 10, reflect on the message that was sent, and and then reply, because there is power in that delayed response. We could reconsider our initial reactions and frame our message more intelligently and more considerate to the other person. So, this discussion led me to think of mindfulness. And so, I found an article from the University of Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley, that discussed impulse control and mindfulness, where mindfulness can help increase emotional regulation. So, mindfulness just encompasses meditation and observing the emotions or thoughts one has versus labeling them as good or bad versus judging them as good or bad. So, research has found that meditation often leads to heightened awareness of the emotional signals that go from our brain to our body, which and also leads to tighter control over our behavior. So, mindfulness also encompasses the action of accepting emotions and just letting them pass through versus using distractions or unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage those emotions. Often we want to stuff negative emotions down and avoid them, or other times also ruminate on them and dwell on them and let things spiral out of control. But what's really important is to just accept the emotions that you're experiencing. Observe how they make you feel, and over time you will notice executive control, which is essentially the same thing as impulse control. And the goal of mindfulness is to have a heightened sense of a present awareness in each moment. So you're in the moment, you're not distracted by your emails or by the demands from your boss or the demands from the work around you, but you're just present in the moment, taking on one task at a time, slowing things down, and just accepting and observing the emotions that you feel. So, essentially, to sum up, how to practice impulse control is to just prevent disruptive coping mechanisms, whether that's finding distractions to deal with your emotions, avoiding your emotions, or dwelling on your emotions altogether. But instead, just refrain from showing judgment to those emotions, such as sadness, anger, or frustration, but just accept each emotional experience as adaptive, seek help from colleagues or a trusted person, and take on each task one at a time. And if one can practice the simple tools of self awareness through journaling, slowing down one's thoughts and emotions, eliminating distractions, this can lead to a more harmonious work environment. The work will appear more pleasant. Interpersonal relationships can be improved by the way you work and collaborate as a team, which can then lead to a positive organizational atmosphere and increased productivity and also decreased absenteeism if employees are behaving more positively, taking their time, they don't feel the pressure to respond to demands right away, but only do what they can. Then this will hopefully reduce stress and also ensure that employees stay in their workplace for a longer period of time, thus reducing employee turnover rates. So, overall, being able to practice impulse control, inhibiting those impulsive behaviors, responding instead of reacting can strengthen relationships, strengthen the workplace, and promote productivity. And that is the end of my presentation.